Good morning. I'm Mrs. Owens, back with you again this week. Not in my classroom today. I borrowed Mrs. Armstrong's classroom, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about a variety of things today. I was just kind of wondering about my class and thinking about my students, and I kind of miss my kiddos. And I thought back to an old TV show that I used to watch called The Brady Bunch. Has anybody ever seen The Brady Bunch? It looks like The Brady Bunch is having a Zoom meeting to me. I think that's funny. It looks like the Zoom meetings that I've had with my kids on Gallery View. But anyway, one of the characters in the old sitcom Brady Bunch that ran in the early 70s was a man by the name of Michael Brady. This is Michael Brady. Michael Brady is an architect. Now, you may or may not know what an architect is. Well, look at his desk and look for clues. I looked for a better picture. I wasn't really able to find one that gave us a good indication of the things on his desk, but you'll notice he has a desk lamp, and at the bottom of his desk, sitting on top of his desk, he's got several drawing utensils, and it looks like he might have some measuring tools. So those would be the tools of an architect. And you might say, okay, that doesn't really help me that much. What is an architect? So I looked up a definition. An architect is a person who plans, designs, and oversees construction of buildings. They might do one of those or they might do all of those. But they're the person who has the idea. They have the dream, and then they draw the plans. If you've just recently moved into a new home, your home started with somebody's idea, and they may have drawn what we call blueprints, and that's what Michael Brady did. Well, our story today is going to be about an architect, and his name is Iggy Peck. Let me show you Iggy Peck, Architect. This book was written by a lady by the name of Andrea Beatty. And Andrea Beatty has written a series of these books that are really kind of fun. So if you like Iggy Peck Architect, you might look up some other Andrea Beatty books. Andrea Beatty. Young Iggy Peck is an architect and has been since he was 2, when he built a great tower in only an hour with nothing but diapers and glue. Good gracious, Ignatius. Oh, has your mother ever used your full name? Usually my mom said my full name instead of my shortened name if she was trying to get my attention. So his mom called him Ignatius. His mother exclaimed, "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen." But her smile faded fast as a light wind blew past, and she realized those diapers weren't clean. Ooh, can you imagine? "Ignatius, my son, what on earth have you done? That's disgusting and nasty. It stinks. Ooh." Have you figured out what style the writer is using to tell the story? Here are some clues. She said he had been an architect since he was 2, and he used nothing but diapers and glue. And then she said, "That's the coolest thing I've ever seen," and she realized those diapers weren't clean. So what is the author using here? You're right. The author is using rhyme and to tell the story, which makes it fun. They're fun to read and they're fun to listen to. Can you think of another very familiar author that oftentimes writes in rhyme? When I think of this, I always think of Dr. Seuss and all of his books written in rhyme. I think that's cool. Look at Mom's face. Can you see her? That look of, ugh, stinky diaper. But Iggy was gone. He was out on the lawn using dirt clods to build a great Sphinx. Now, let's go back and talk about those rhyming words again. Now, in this one, it says, Iggy was gone. He was out on the lawn. Do not be confused with rhyming words or misled by thinking they always look alike. Because look at these two words. Lawn, gone. Say the words. Say lawn, gone. Do they rhyme? Yeah, they do. But look, they're not spelled the same. They're not in a family of words that all spell the same, like hat and cat, that. But they still rhyme because they have that same vowel sound and that same ending sound. So don't ever be confused about that when you're thinking about rhyming words. Now, it says that Iggy built a Sphinx. Are you familiar with that? That's a really, really, really cool landmark. Let me give you a bigger picture of a Sphinx. Take a look at that. That is the Great Sphinx of Giza. It's in Egypt. It was built over 4,000 years ago. Do you think somebody had to come up with a plan for that? Oh, absolutely. Now, I'm sure it didn't look anything at all like Michael Brady might have drawn the picture, but there was some thinking that was done before this was sculpted out of limestone. This was built to commemorate or to honor a pharaoh. His name was Khafre, and the body of the Sphinx is a recumbent lion. It's a lion laying down. And the head was that to resemble the pharaoh. The head of it was to resemble the pharaoh. Ugh. It looks like it's been damaged a little bit over the 4,000 years. But what a cool landmark. I wonder if any of my friends out there have ever been to Egypt and possibly even seen what a phenomenal landmark. I don't know. Well, if you'll notice Iggy's, it's a pretty good likeness of that Sphinx, but I want you to get a load of Mom and Dad over here. They're doing their sunbathing outside that day, and they have dirt clods all over them. I think that's funny. Iggy's just out there working, having a great time. When Iggy was 3, his parents could see his unusual passion would stay. He built churches and chapels from peaches and apples and temples from modeling clay. So he used whatever materials were available. The Sphinx was built out of dirt clods, and in the house he used all their apples and all of their peaches and modeling clay. Look at Mom and Dad. They must be going somewhere fancy. She's in a long dress and looks like he's in a tuxedo. They must have been pretty proud of Iggy. Oh my goodness. At dinner one night, to his father's delight, Iggy got a bright gleam in his eye and out on the porch built the St. Louis Arch from pancakes and coconut pie. Look at that. Now, you guys are probably pretty familiar with an arch. Maybe the McDonald's double golden arches. I bet you've seen those before. But Iggy wasn't building that. Big Iggy was building the Gateway Arch in St. Louis. Take a look at that. How beautiful is that landmark? In St. Louis, Missouri, that is the Gateway Arch. And it was built to commemorate the westward expansion in the United States. Built about 1967, and it's the tallest national monument, America's tallest national monument. And if you go up in it, I've seen it before. I've been there, but I haven't actually visited the site where the arch is. But you can actually go up in that. And at the very top, they have windows. And it says if you get to the very top, you can look out and you can see 30 miles on either side of this beautiful city. So that was a pretty cool thing. I did a little bit more research. You might want to do some on your own about this. It's a pretty cool thing. It's it's an interesting thing to look at. And that's not too far from us in St. Louis, Missouri. So Iggy built that too. Iggy must have had a good background of things. Oh, life is beginning to change for Iggy, though. Now it says Dear Ig had made it to second grade. Ooh, he's in second grade. When his teacher was Miss Lila Greer. On the very first day, she had this to say: "We do not talk of buildings in here. Gothic or Romanesque, I couldn't care less about buildings, ancient or new." She said in her lecture about architecture that it had no place in grade 2. Now, here's Miss Greer, and she's throwing away all of the architecture books in the classroom. Here are all of the second grade students except our friend Iggy, and he's over here really not listening to Miss Greer. Ugh, he's building something over here on the table. It looks like he's using chalk. Does your teacher look like that? Does she have a bun on her head? Does she look similar to Miss Greer? I don't know. Well, that might seem severe. Did you think that that might seem severe? But it says that she was sincere. She really meant it. For when she was no more than 7, she had a great fright at a dizzying height in a building so tall it scraped heaven. On an architect's tour of the 95th floor, young Lila got lost from the group. Oh, have you ever gotten lost from your parents before? Isn't that scary? Do you know, that was how she felt. She was so scared, and she was only 7 years old, and they were in this huge skyscraper, and she got separated from her parents. Well, I kind of understand why she doesn't like to talk about architecture and all of that and buildings, because that's where she had that experience. All right, let's go on. She was found 2 days later in a stuck elevator. Whew, that's good. Yeah, she was found. And after that day, it's quite safe to say she thought all building lovers were nuts. And as a teacher, she taught that above all, one ought to avoid them. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, the writer here used something kind of special that you might use in your writing at some time or another. The writer in the book used something we call flashback. And if you notice, we saw Miss Greer, how she was at the very beginning, teacher in grade 2. We saw her, and we noticed that we looked at her throwing away all of those books. And I want you to notice the little bun on top of her head, because that's a dead giveaway. And then when she began to tell of her experience that happened when she was 7, look how the illustrator made her have that same bun on her head so she'd be easy to spot. And that's what a flashback does. In Iggy Peck, the author uses a flashback to give you insight into why Miss Lila Greer wouldn't discuss buildings in her second grade classroom. That's why she didn't want to do that, because she had been frightened so terribly when she was young. Does that kind of make sense? If you didn't know that, though, about Mrs. Greer, you might have thought Mrs. Greer was a mean old woman. Ooh, mean old teacher. But when we actually found out, she truly did, she did have a reason for why she was. Something to think about. Now, after that day, it said that she was, or it said that she was in the elevator with this circus troupe. I find that to be quite funny. In an elevator, stuck in an elevator with a bunch of circus performers. That might be terrifying in and of itself. As you might guess, it would cause Iggy stress to hear such terrible talk. But he didn't hear. He sat in the rear while building a castle of chalk. So Iggy wasn't listening to Miss Greer tell her story about why she was so terrified. He was over there building. And it angered her. I want you to look at her body language. She's got that hand on her hip, and she's got that finger out, and she begins to scold Iggy. You, Iggy Peck, your desk is a wreck. Tear down that castle right now. You will not build in here. Is that perfectly clear? Do you need to see Principal How? Have you ever had to go see the principal? Is that scary? Some of our kids might have to go see the principal. Our principal, she's not really very scary. She's really pretty nice. We kind of like her. Her name is Mrs. T, in case you've forgotten. Oh, I want you to look at Iggy. Look at him really, really close. Iggy is really sad because I don't really think Iggy's a bad kid. I think he's really bright, but he just has a hard time listening. And he responded to Miss Greer very respectfully, and he said, "No, ma'am," Iggy said, and he lowered his head, and his heart sank down to the floor. With no chance to build, his interest was killed. Now, second grade was a bore. Oh, I feel sorry for Iggy, but it got better. It said after 12 long days that passed in a haze of reading, writing, and arithmetic, Miss Greer took the class to Blue River Pass for a hike and an old-fashioned picnic. And, oh, they're all stepping off going to the picnic until you get to the end of the line, and Iggy's dragging up the end of the line because he's just not very happy about second grade. They crossed an old trestle to a small island nestled in the heart of a burbling stream. Now, let's think about that for a second. What in the world do you think a trestle would be? Well, if I use my context clues, I see that they crossed it, so it's something that you cross, and they cross it to get to an island. Now, what do you know about an island? An island is completely surrounded by what? By water. So when they cross this old trestle, a trestle must be a bridge. Yeah, it must be a bridge. And they crossed the bridge to an island. But as they did, they no sooner passed than the footbridge collapsed. And Miss Lila Greer started to scream. "We're trapped here! Oh my! Alas, kids, goodbye." And her eyeballs rolled back in her head, and she dropped to the ground with a vague groaning sound. Luckily, she fainted. She wasn't dead. I'm glad. That's terrible. The class was amazed, and they stood there quite dazed, uncertain of what they should do. But one bright young man was off hatching a plan. Oh, who do you think it was? Which started with Miss Lila's shoe. So Iggy hatches this plan, and here's Iggy directing. He's standing on top of this little boulder and looks like he's doing some drawing or sketching in the dirt, and he gets all of the kids in his class involved, and he asks them to donate things. He's having some of them bring up wood, and some of them bring up little twigs, and they're all taking their shoestrings out of their shoes, and it looks like they're working there together. They're working as a team. And we know teamwork makes the dream work, right? And that's exactly what happened here. Soon, each lad and lass there at Blue River Pass was working together as one. And when she came to, Miss Lila Greer knew that something quite brave had been done. Oh my goodness, look at what they completed. The kids now are on this side. Here's Miss Lila Greer over here on this side. She looked in the air and she saw hanging there a structure with cables and braces. And on the far side, beaming with pride, were 17 smiling young faces. 17, not 16 and Iggy. 17. Iggy's back in his element and smiling again. Boots and tree roots and strings, fruit roll-ups and things, some of which some should not mention. Get a load of the flag in somebody's underwear. were stretched ridge to ridge in a glorious bridge dangling from shoestring suspension. Iggy built a suspension bridge. Take a look at this. A suspension bridge is a bridge that has a deck suspended from cables, usually raised on towers. One of the most famous suspension bridges some of you may have visited before. Has anybody ever been to Royal Gorge Bridge in Cannon City, Colorado? Look at, if you can see the picture on my left, you can see the bridge. It spans about miles over the Arkansas River, and there the other picture on the other side kind of shows you the suspension, just like Iggy's bridge was, but instead of shoestrings, they've got big strong cables. I have one other photo for you to see. Look at that. That is looking from the bottom up, and I've actually walked across that bridge before. That's one that I've seen before, so that was a landmark that was kind of cool. Now, we'll finish up because thank goodness Iggy came to the rescue. It all became clear to Miss Lila Greer as she crossed that bridge over the stream. There are worse things to do when you're in grade 2 than to spend your time building a dream. I think Miss Lila Greer learned a lesson. I think Miss Lila Greer appreciated Iggy's strengths of learning. Now, every week at Blue River Creek Elementary in second grade, all the school kids can hear, along with Miss Greer, how the world's greatest buildings were made. Oh, Iggy is showing you how all of these famous landmarks all around the world were built. The weekly guest speaker in t-shirt and sneakers talks of buildings from Rome to Quebec. Of course, he's the guy who builds towers from pie. That brilliant young man, Iggy Peck. Don't you just love Iggy Peck? Now, I thought it might be fun if we took some time and we built some polygons. Because remember, if you want to be an architect, you're probably going to have some good, strong math skills. And you're going to have to be able to put shapes together to build things. Because think of all the things that Iggy did in the book. Iggy was able to build a Sphinx, and Iggy was able to build the arch out of pancakes. And all of those required him to be familiar with shapes. And right before school was out for spring break, we had begun to study geometry, which was the study of shapes. And we started with just the basics. We learned about lines and line segments, and then we moved on to polygons. And we talked about what a polygon was. A polygon being a closed shape with 3 or more straight lines. So that's what we talked about. And here were those basic polygons that we learned about right before we left for spring break. We talked about the triangle. Triangle has 3 sides. And then we talked about the rectangle. And we talked about the parallelogram. We talked about a pentagon, a hexagon, and an octagon. Mr. Trujillo, is that counter right? Okay. And these were the things that we talked about. So I thought, you know what? What might be fun is if we were Iggy and we built some sticky structures. And so what I got these at Walmart. They're called spice drops, but they're just little gumdrops. You might have some fruit chews at home that would work, or marshmallows that would work. And what I did was I just began to build polygons. And here was my triangle. You'll notice my 3 sides. Now, the shapes that I started with, I built a square. And all I did was I just took the toothpicks. I forgot to show you, I used toothpicks. I figure you probably knew that. And these were so fun. There was a lot more fun than I thought they would be. And I just built a structure. This is how I built a square, and you couldn't really mess it up. And I put it together. And you can do this at home, and it's really kind of fun, and they're really cute. I even ate gumdrop or two along the way. I'm not a fan of gumdrops. And there. See how I put it together? Look at this one. What do you think that is? That's the pentagon. See how it's got 5 sides to it? That's a pentagon. And then look at this one. Look at this one I did. That one, it has 8 sides. What was an 8-sided shape? Do you remember? It was an octagon. Now, I went a little further and decided, these are what we call 2-dimensional. Okay? Polygons are 2-dimensional shapes. I went a little further and I went to solid figures. And I took my square and look what happened. This is a 3-dimensional shape. But notice I still have that initial 4-sided shape. Look at that. Isn't that cool? This has dimension. This one is called a cube. These are the vertexes or the vertices. These are the corners. I want to show you one more because I'm just about to run out of time. Look at this one. Look at its faces. I have a square face here, but look at my faces on this side. Oh, I want to challenge you this week to get out there and be an Iggy Peck. And you might want to build some of these fun little simple polygons that we talked about or investigate solid figures. Build anything. I now have a Facebook page. Everybody got a Facebook page. So I got a Facebook page. Mrs. O's Facebook Fun is the name of my account. Get on there if you build something. If you build a Sphinx, if you want to build a suspension bridge, I don't care what you want to build. Just be an Iggy Peck and have a good time doing it. I'll see you next week. Have a great day.